Welcome to Books the Biz, the show where real-world business meets real-world results. Hosted by business strategist Dan Paulson and veteran CFO Richard Veltri, this podcast breaks down the stories, trends, and financial insights shaping today's companies. Dan brings decades of experience helping leaders simplify operations, build strong cultures, and scale with confidence. Rich adds his deep financial expertise from guiding organizations across healthcare, construction, logistics, and professional services. Together, they dig into what's really happening behind the numbers and what it means for owners, executives, and anyone trying to grow a stronger, smarter business. This is practical conversation, real talk, and tools you can use right now. Welcome to Books the Biz.
There we go. Look at this. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Books the Biz. As you can tell, I'm on the left side of the screen where I'm not normally, and I'm the one who's the bald guy. So when it says that I'm Dan, I'm not Dan. It's Rich Veltri from Veltri Group, and I have a guest today because Dan was unfortunately tied up. So I've got Bobby Giurintano with me, and we are going to talk about different things, but the biggest thing I think we have to talk about is what is going on with small businesses who are hitting that wall of overpaying, whether it's subscriptions or anything else that you generally pay and you kind of forget about because everything winds up on autopilot. I think we have to start diving into that issue. And luckily, Bobby said, I can help you with that. So let's talk to Bobby Giurintano. You want to introduce yourself, Bobby?
Yes. First and foremost, thanks to Dan for inviting me, and thanks for you to have me on. And also, thanks to Dan for not being here, all right? We're going to have a much better time without him, so I'm actually kind of glad he couldn't make it. Oh, my God. But yeah, my name is Bobby. The company is Premium Recovery Experts. We work with businesses all across the country, from small to large, and we do comprehensive reviews of their past workers' comp audits. Those annoying audits you go through every single year with your carrier. What most people don't know is the auditors make a lot of mistakes that cost you money, hence why you overpay. So my team reviews those past audits to see if there are any mistakes that were made in the past years. Once we get those mistakes corrected, you receive a refund. So it's an awesome service that most people have no idea even exists.
Well, I didn't know it existed, so yeah. I guess you can educate me a bit because I'm usually the accountant guy that gets the call that says, I just got my audit back and I didn't like that. And you start to try to explain how a workers' comp audit works. And everybody says to me, I have no idea what you just said. And unfortunately, I think they like it being that complicated. So what are you finding? Is there a general reason why this becomes an issue? Is there anything specific you can kind of point to that tells you this is what you need to call me about?
Yeah, not so much something specific. I mean, there are some red flags which I'll mention, but so why does this happen so often? I mean, a lot of the carriers actually use third-party companies to do the audits, so they're not even doing them themselves. They're actually employing an outside company to do it. There's very high turnover. Training can be very low. So these folks are auditing huge policies and making mistakes left and right. Plus, too, I also learned this by speaking to one of those third-party auditors that they're actually incentivized to purposely find something where a client can get an invoice and they get a piece of the action on that. So the audits are 100% one-sided in favor of the carrier because they know how complicated it is, like you said, and lots of customers just won't fight it. They don't want to be bothered with it. They'll just pay it and keep it moving. So, yeah.
Okay. What would our audience need to understand? I mean, okay, let me take a step back on how I'm asking that question, right? When I walk into clients, they say the state says I have to have workers' comp insurance. And beyond that, they know they have to pay an initial premium. And after that, they probably have no clue what is happening. It's either connected to their payroll or, they just kind of, again, like I said in the intro, they set it on autopilot. And when you set it on autopilot, everybody kind of forgets. Then the audit shows up and the audit says, hey, guess what? You owe us more money. And they don't understand why they owe more money. So how does that initial process work that puts them on the track towards owing more money when they probably should know that, you're going down this road of owing more money? Why?
Yeah, sure. So in a lot of cases, when someone owes money after an audit, that's not necessarily from someone that the auditor found. It's basically the underreported their payroll. So when you get your premium calculations, you're giving that broker your payroll estimation for the year. God willing, your business grows and your payroll goes up. So at the end of the year, when they perform the audit, after your payroll had gone up and that was more than you accounted for when you originally got the policy, you'll pay overages based upon the additional wages that were not factored in the first place. That can easily be solved if you have a payroll provider that can set up your workers' comp as what's called pay-as-you-go. So what pay-as-you-go does, it fluctuates your workers' comp premium with your payroll. So that all it does is it avoids the end of the year audit getting a bill for underreported payroll. That's not to say you won't get a bill at the end of the year for anything else they may find, but oftentimes if someone gets a bill at the end of an audit, or at least probably half the time, it's because of just the payroll numbers were inaccurate. So that's just something too that it's definitely advantageous to set up with your payroll provider if they allow it. If they don't allow it, you might want to look elsewhere. But setting up your workers' comp as pay as you go with your payroll prevents that overage at the end of the year.
Okay, so it's based on an estimation, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Is it also a possibility? Well, first off, I'm going to throw some people under the bus, I guess, and they're not going to like me after today. But I guess to a certain extent, is there incentive to keep that number low, get somebody in, and their new policy gets provided, and then towards the end of the year, all of a sudden there's, hey, wait a minute, that was way lower than my payroll. Like I already knew the payroll was going to be a higher number, and now it's coming in lower, and that's why I'm short for the audit.
So you're saying if they basically gave the wrong number to the carrier in terms of they were too low or too high?
Low. So if, I'm not an insurance salesman. So I guess the biggest question for me off the top of my head is, could the salesman then say, well, you want your workers' comp to only be this, and this is the estimation that has to go in on the first year policy. And then you get to the end and you're like, oops, it's way lower than I probably should have made sure it was there. But I guess the reason I'm asking the question is for the business owners who listen to us, I want them to listen to us and say to them, look, it's not a rate game. We'll talk about the rates in a second, but it's not a rate game. It's if you pay the payroll, this is the amount you pay in workers' comp. There's not really too much of a comparison. I mean, I'm from New York. You, if I understand it right, you were from New York at one point. New York's basically state funded.
Yeah, I mean, you can be in the state fund or you can be a private carrier, but New York is definitely expensive, so that's a fact. But basically, you don't want to play the payroll game. You don't want to underreport it on purpose because that's just not good business practice because you'll get stuck with a huge bill at the end of the year. And companies on the opposite side, let's just say you downsize and your payroll reduces from the original stated payroll, you'll get a refund. So, payroll doesn't, the up and down payroll isn't too much of a factor in the work that we do. We're more or less looking in reverse for potential mistakes that might have been made, to a classification code, to an experience rating calculation, to a claim, to overtime calculations, and so on and so forth.
Okay. I'm glad you said classification code because that was kind of where my mind was going to next to ask about, is there anything people should know? Okay. Or is there anything that people should call you about? Because, I'm not sure whether I should send them to you directly or whether to send it to you because they're being audited. But I guess the classification code, that can be a big source of an issue too, right?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, the three biggest culprits that generate the refunds, more times than not, in the work that we do, is going to be incorrect classification codes, experience reading calculations being wrong, and claims not being factored properly with the experience rating. I mean, we have a nonprofit we're working with now that's going to get a very sizable refund. They had a whole huge group of employees that were miscoded for a period of time. And that's ultimately going to end up becoming a six-figure refund back to the organization. So it's very difficult for companies simply because there's just so many classification codes. I mean, there's like 600 plus of them. So it's very hard sometimes to really figure out where your employee sits. And plus, too, a lot of times companies disagree with the class codes that the carrier or the auditor for the carrier or the auditor representing the carrier puts them in. So if any companies have any doubts or are unsure or unhappy with the audit, or even the past audits, and even if they don't have any issues, sometimes you work with companies, they have no claims, they have no issues, everything seems clean on the surface, and then we go back and do a review, and we still find errors that warrant a giant refund. So I tell folks it's good practice if you're spending at least $70,000 a year on workers' comp. It is a good practice to have an independent company review those past audits because it could affect your premiums going forward, and of course, you could be owed money in the past.
Okay. I've got a couple of examples, I guess, of number one, someone who paid a lot of extra money because they did not understand the process. Just really quickly for the audience, they had a payroll that was around $6 million during COVID because they were servicing hospitals, and hospitals went crazy for the COVID pandemic. And all of a sudden payrolls rose. So where did their workers' comp go? Went right along with the payroll. So when the payroll decreased because COVID subsided and they went to a much lower, down to 1.5 million roughly of payroll, they were still paying the workers' comp on the old number.
Oof.
Because they had failed to give enough evidence, and all of a sudden the workers' comp said, well, we assessed. And when they assessed, all of a sudden they were still paying based on the $6 million number. So that becomes your first problem. If you don't understand the process, you're susceptible to hitting the wrong number, and when it starts to hurt, that's when you realize it probably shouldn't hurt because the rates are relatively small. So then you get to the second level, right? And my second example, when I had a client that is a small business and does excavation services. So basically they're digging holes, and they get called by other people to be their subcontractor and dig a hole, whether it's a sewer main, whether it's a main line to the house. It's essentially they're doing this outside work, and 9 times out of 10, they're hired by the plumber. But on the other side, they have one job where they got, and all of a sudden they hire the plumber. And again, don't understand quite the process, but all of a sudden workers' comp labeled them as plumbers as opposed to equipment operators, and you have a rate problem. So I think the reason I'm bringing those up is, this is where you get into an issue when you're talking about workers' comp. You're saying, understand the process and understand the rate.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the issue you're talking about, that's something that they have, a good broker, that's just something, just like you have a tax question, you ask a CPA or, like yourself, right? But asking their broker, and the broker can assist with stuff like that. But in the end, if they have any discrepancies or they're just unhappy with, what, the insurance carrier came up with, that's where we come in. So we basically go in and look at the past years, like I said, to try to uncover what may have been done wrong and see if, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't have had to pay this much on a premium when your payroll went down to 1.5 million from 6. stuff like that. So that's a department that we work in, and we actually get a lot of business from brokers. Brokers don't necessarily do the work that we do in the depth. And what I mean by that is, your broker is just like your general medicine doctor. They sell multiple types of insurance. They service the clients. We're experts in one area, and that's the past audits. We can't tell you the best deal in town, the best coverage. That's what your broker does. We know the audits inside and out. That's our expertise. So just like if you went to a doctor and said, "Hey, doctor, my foot's killing me," your general doctor, the doctor says, "Okay, could be this, could be that." But then what does the doctor do? The doctor sends you to a foot specialist, someone that looks at feet all day long. That's all they know. Same type of thing. So even though the brokers can help to a certain degree, they often reach out to us because we do a really in-depth review of those past audits.
Okay. And how far back can you go? Is there a limit on how far back you can go?
Great question. There's no statute of limitations at all. We go back 7 years, but typically rule of thumb is any errors that are 5 years or sooner will get approved. We've also had clients. We had one about a year ago that we got them a $50,000+ refund from errors that were 10, 11, and 12 years old. And we don't even request information that far back. The carrier just sent us more stuff than we asked for, and my team found the errors and like, "Hey, let's go for it. Let's see if they approve it." And the carrier approved it. Client got the refund. It was a huge win, but that's not the common thread. And I've also had clients that were declined a refund because it went past that 5-year mark. So we go back 7 years because as it approaches that 5th year, we look for certain patterns with their employees, certain things that may have changed leading up to that 5th year. So wait a minute, why did this employee change from this to this? Hey, what happened here? It just gives us more evidence. But I would definitely say for rule of thumb, 5 years or sooner, we can get it approved and you'll get a refund.
Okay. So is there an ideal industry that you like to work with because you know it better than any other? Or, mostly for me, like, I go through and I have, clients in very various industries, right? And I want to know who are the people that are the best likely people to send your way.
Yeah, so I kind of put them into 4 buckets. I say it's if your company has most of your employees that are building, fixing, driving, or serving something, those are usually the best types of companies. So and our top 3 industries are going to be the trades, social service nonprofits, manufacturing. We also work with transportation, so like bus companies and limo companies, hospitality, so your restaurants and hotels, healthcare, home healthcare, hospitals, healthcare facilities. So basically, it said if you're spending at least $70,000 a year, it's good for us to come in and take a look at your past audits. So companies that are not good, companies that have mostly office-based employees or people that are working remotely, they don't have a ton of exposure to get injured from workers' comp. It's not like they're going to fall out of their chair at their desk, or a law firm's going to get a paper cut, and it's going to inflate their insurance. It's just not a risky industry. So so people that are working with their hands are the best types of companies to work with.
Okay. So office type is a no. So like staffing companies, stuff like that usually
depends
doesn't.
Staffing actually is very good. It just depends on the type of staffing. If they're staffing admin employees, that's not good. If they're staffing medical workers, they're staffing potentially construction or potential manufacturing. That makes a difference. So it just depends, like I said, on the types of folks that they're actually staffing. Like if they're office-based employees, that's not a good fit.
Okay. And nationwide?
Yep. There's only 4 states that we can't work in. That's because of the state laws. So that's Washington State, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Ohio. So if you're a business in those states and you're not doing business in any other states, you have to get your insurance, your workers' comp directly from the state program. And though other states have state programs as well, those 4 states, we cannot audit the state program. So it's just those 4 states. But, I know the stupid line I always say we can service Eskimos to hula girls. From Alaska to Hawaii. So, but all across the country, it doesn't matter where they're located, as long as it's not in those 4 states. But let's just say they're in Ohio, but they're doing business in 3 of the neighboring states. They have to get a policy for each of those other states they're working in, and we can audit those policies.
Okay. Anything else that you would be interested in getting to our audience? Anything else you'd like to explain, or is there other aspects of what you do for people?
Yeah. First off, a lot of times folks think they don't need our services. I'll just say this. If you've never had an independent company review your past audits, you're selling yourself short and you're likely leaving money sitting in the carrier's pockets. Brokers do a great job, but they can't dedicate the time and energy to do the work that we do because it takes hours and hours and several months just to gather all the information. For a broker to go back 7 years, it's a ton of work, and they have to go out, help their clients in addition to making sales for themselves. So a lot of brokers bring us in, and the one they do want to clear up is that if you do find errors that result in a refund, it is not a fault of the broker. That is a big misconception. Sometimes brokers are maybe afraid to bring us in because they think it's going to make them look bad, which is not the case at all. The errors we find are a result of the auditors that represent the carrier. So it's definitely not a broker issue. Brokers refer us because, like I said, we are experts in one area. In terms of the process, it is super hands off. That's another reason why sometimes people are like, I'll have to gather all this information and send it over to you. It's the complete opposite. We tell clients if you have access to information within 2 minutes, send it over. If it takes you longer than 2 minutes, don't even bother. Because we can go out and get all that information directly from the carrier and from the ratings boards and agencies that we need to do our review. So it's a very, very light lift on the client. If they spend 45 minutes spread out over a few months, that's probably about it. And it's a contingency-based solution. So we only get paid if the client gets a refund or some savings. So if we come up empty, they basically pay nothing. So we're willing to do all of the work to see if we can hopefully get them some money back, which we do about 75% of the time.
Okay. Very, very interesting stuff. So especially for those of our clients or our listeners that are, specifically paying payroll, and definitely if you're paying payroll in multiple states or that you've put everything sort of on an autopilot, might be worth, getting a look at your workers' comp, see what you're paying for your workers' comp. And if it doesn't look right, give Bobby a call.
And even if it does, give us a call anyway. Because it's funny. Why this happens, I have no idea. But the folks that tell us, hey, listen, we'll go through this because, hey, it doesn't cost us anything. You can do all the work, but I think you're wasting your time. Those people tend to get the most money back for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know if it's like a universe thing or something. I don't know. But I just tell folks, listen, if we're going to do all the work and there's a 75% chance you're going to get money back and you only pay us if you get money back, does it hurt? It does not hurt. And one other thing, too, I do want to add is that sometimes, it doesn't happen often, we do find mistakes that are in the client's favor, meaning that the carrier should be charging them more. If we do spot that, we tell the client and then we remove our work, we back off. Because the last thing we want is the carrier to go back and say, wait a minute, this is wrong. Hey, you owe us money. So if we do find any errors in their favor, which probably happens maybe 1% of the time, we let the client know and then we just stop our work because we don't want the client to get a bill. The whole point of this is they don't get a refund and then hopefully save money on their future premiums.
Okay, good to know. So if a listener wants to get a hold of you, Bobby, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. You can book a call via the website, premiumrecoveryexperts.com. You can shoot me an email, bobbyg@premiumrecoveryexperts.com. And then we'll set up a quick call. A call doesn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes. To move forward, we assign 2 pieces of paper that takes probably less than 5 minutes. And then my team does all the work on their own. And they'll only reach out when they have questions on stuff or just anything pertaining to the review. But like I said, it is an incredibly light lift. And that's one of the best responses we get from clients is, man, this was great. I really didn't do much. And I'm like, yes, that's kind of the whole point of this because everyone's very busy. People are overworked. They just have a lot of things on their plate. So this is not another project, but it is a great way to add some money to their budget without them having to spend anything or really do anything.
All right, sounds good. And if I can help anybody, reach out to Bobby, or if you have questions about whether you should, which probably sounds like you should, you can always reach me by email at rich@xcxo.net. Bobby, thank you very much for coming out and spending the time with us on here. And we hope that these people that are listening will actually jump on and make some contact with you.
I hope so too, because I want to help them out. And there's nothing worse than leaving money in someone else's pocket, especially when it's a multi-billion-dollar insurance carrier that's just dying to squeeze every penny out of you. So we fight for the little guys and then get the money back from the big guys.
Sounds like a fabulous plan. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks, Dan. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks for not showing up. All right. Now I'm left with the how do I deal with the technical stuff. So I'm going to go do that. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Bobby, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Let's hit this button over here.